You've heard of the legendary mobster Al Capone. Was he responsible for expiration dates on bottles of milk? Let's try to find out on a brand new episode of The Internet Says It's True. Welcome back to The Internet Says It's True, where every week we learn something that sounds made up but is really true. This is part of the WCBE podcast experience in Columbus, Ohio. My name's Michael Kent. This is episode 191. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode about the zombies and their several fake imposters. And if you haven't listened to that one, go back and listen to it after you listen to this episode. It's a fun one to have in your pocket if you're into telling stories. This is another one, and although this isn't a true The Internet Says It's True style story, because pinning down facts on this one is very difficult, it's interesting nonetheless, and I did try my very best. I want to remind everyone to go to the website, click the Patreon link. You're certainly not obligated to give money to this podcast, but it is really appreciated. It helps me keep going, and you can join at any amount. It gets you in the Cool Kids Club. I call them Tizitors. It's like Tizit is like the acronym for the podcast, and then Tiziter sounds like visitor, I guess. I couldn't think of anything better. Give me a break, or just give me $1 today at patreon.com/Michael Kent. And when you do that, you get ad-free episodes, sometimes early episodes, and all kinds of other goodies. Once again, patreon.com/Michael Kent, or just go to the website for this podcast and click the Patreon link.
I am once again asking for your financial support.
So let's talk about legendary gangster Al Capone.
Let's get on with it.
Sometimes horrible people do good things. Saddam Hussein gave free education and free health care to the citizens of Iraq. Hitler passed a bunch of animal advocacy laws, and Ted Bundy worked at a suicide hotline. These men are still monsters. They're just awful people who did a couple good things. And by pointing out a story about something good they did, doesn't mean I'm trying to revitalize their image or excuse their vile acts. Sometimes it's just interesting to see this strange juxtaposition, and that's what today's story is about. There are a lot of facts about Al Capone that can't be 100% proven. One of the earliest ones has to do with how he got his infamous nickname Scarface. Capone hated the name because he hated the scar across his face. A lot of the photos that you'll see of Scarface have him turning his head to the side to hide the scars on the left side. He had 3 large scars across his cheek and above his neck, and thus became known as Scarface. His close friends called him Snorky, which apparently, I don't understand this, but apparently was some sort of reference to him dressing well. But to this day, no one knows for sure how he got those scars. We know that his early years were spent working in New York City for a bunch of different gangs like the 5 Points Gang, the Bowery Boys, the Brooklyn Rippers, and the Junior 40 Thieves. The most popular theory of how he got the scars places the story somewhere around 1918 and involves fellow gangster Frank Galluccio. The story involved Capone insulting either Galluccio's sister or girlfriend, but this story was never told until decades later once Capone was in prison. Capone would tell people he earned the scars while fighting in the military in France during the war. No one has ever uncovered any evidence that Capone was in the military at all, so that one is decidedly false. There's a Brooklyn Times article that may have the true story, that he received the scar in December of 1917 by 2 random criminals on the street. And I tell this story to stress that many things about this guy we just can't pin down. Capone is a legendary figure, so the stories about him get spread far and wide regardless of their truth. There have been more than a dozen major films about the life of Capone and hundreds of books, so over the course of a century, the line between fact and fiction can become blurred. Even contemporaneous accounts from the early 1900s tend to contradict one another. There are some things we know for sure. Capone left New York for Chicago in 1919 and started his career there as a bouncer for a brothel run by the Chicago mob. A lot of his legendary status as a ruthless mob boss begins in Chicago. Capone basically ran the underground crime world in Chicago through the 1920s and early 30s. Prostitution, gambling, bootlegging, bribery, drug trafficking, robberies, protection rackets, and murder were all attributed to Scarface. He had been invited to Chicago by mob boss Johnny Torrio, but after Torrio was seriously wounded in an assassination attempt in 1925, Capone became the boss. Once Capone was in charge, all of the rival gangs were completely eliminated. He's thought to have orchestrated the famous 1929 St. Valentine's Day Massacre, in which 7 members of a rival gang were all assassinated by mobsters posing as police. I could go on to list the many, many crimes that have been attributed to Capone, but this podcast isn't about Al Capone, the crime boss. It's about Al Capone, the altruistic, upstanding member of society, or at least his attempt at being that. We'll talk about Al Capone, the milk distributor, after a quick break. If you love listening to this podcast every week and you want to show your support, that would mean a great deal to me. You can do that by becoming a Patreon member. We've got members at all levels, whether you want to pledge $1 a month or $10 a month. Just think about the value that you receive from this show. And if you like the histories and the stories that you learn about or the jokes that you hear, and if you think that they're worth it, consider signing up. For that, you get every episode ad-free and a week early, access to bonuses like the unedited videos of the guest appearances, and 20% off all merchandise. You can sign up today at patreon.com/Michael Kent. That's patreon.com/Michael Kent.
I'm John DeSando, host of Back Talk. This podcast is an extension of the long-running, award-winning movie review show, It's Movie Time. Back Talk features additional content and banter with guests about new movies. If you want more insight and information about what's playing now in theaters and online, find Back Talk at the WCBE Podcast Experience on WCBE.org. You'll be happy you did.
We're living through the most dynamic time in human history, and what we do as leaders matter. We are the ones that create the leverage to shift directions of our companies, our nonprofits, and our communities. As a leader or an emerging leader, please join me for a dynamic conversation with top thought leaders, academics, and executives to learn more about how to elevate your leadership. I'm Maureen Metcalf. Join us at the WCBE Podcast Experience at WCBE.org.
The economic outlook for everyday Chicagoans in 1930 was bleak. Something like 40% of the workforce in Chicago found themselves unemployed after the crash of 1929. So for Thanksgiving in 1930, one Chicago soup kitchen had a line of 5,000 hungry, out-of-work Chicagoans, and the proprietor of that soup kitchen was none other than the infamous Alphonse Capone. By that point in his career, he had already become known as the most ruthless gangster alive. He had left a wake of death and destruction behind him as he took revenge on anyone who got in the way of his many illegitimate business interests. But for poor Chicagoans, some saw him as a man of the people. During Prohibition, when they couldn't get alcohol, he was the man credited with bootlegging the liquor for them. He was the one bribing local law enforcement to look the other way. He was a man of the people. After all, it wasn't those innocent people who were being gunned down by Capone. His only beef was with mafia competitors and people who got in the way of his business. But as ruthless as the man was, he also had started to pay for his crimes. The 1925 attack on Torrio had also injured Capone and kind of shaken him up. He had seen friends and colleagues gunned down in the line of work, like fellow mobster Jaime Weiss, and even Capone's personal driver, who had been kidnapped, tortured, and killed. Capone himself often traveled away from the city just to stay safe, and he was always careful to keep distance between himself and the crimes that were ordered on his behalf, such as the gruesome St. Valentine's Day massacre, which was never actually connected to Al Capone. He apparently had told people close to him that he wanted to, quote, go straight and get out of the crime game. He had enough pull within the city to get things done, and thought that the people would support him. He thought of himself like a sort of Robin Hood figure, and in addition to helping support local widows and orphans, he ran projects like the soup kitchen. There was also the fact that Prohibition had ended, and he needed more revenue streams to replace the $100 million bootlegging business. And one of his legitimate businesses was a milk bottling plant. He found that the markup on milk was even greater than the alcohol he'd been peddling. And this is where the story may get closer to legend. There's a quote that I found in multiple places, none of them with any sort of attribution. It's supposedly Al Capone talking to his brother. Quote, "I've got to get out, Ralph. I've got enough money. I don't need this insanity. Weiss, Moran, and the members of other gangs are idiots. You can't do business with crazy people. I've been shot at, almost poisoned with prussic acid, and there's an offer of $50,000 to any gunman who will kill me. They don't understand that there's enough for all of us. They're mad because I run a better business. I make more money than they do. I run my outfit like a business. It is a business." End quote. Now, because this podcast is about actual true facts, it's important that I preface this next part with a warning. It's never actually been verified, but the story has lasted, and it makes sense when you consider the place and the time and the businesses that Capone was in. The story goes like this. Sometime in the late 1920s, one of Capone's relatives became seriously ill after drinking expired milk. And as Capone was in this phase of his life where he was interested in rehabilitating his image from gangster to philanthropist, he lobbied Chicago City Council to start requiring a stamp on milk bottles that would list the expiration date. Of course, refrigerators weren't available to the public yet, and the shelf life of milk was short. So while he was lobbying Chicago politicians to enact this law, he was busy buying up all the equipment that would be necessary to stamp glass milk bottles. So the story continues that his plan ran into a snag because the milkmen were unionized, and therefore only Teamsters could deliver milk, not Capone's men. He tried to work out a deal with the Teamsters and it failed. So he had the Milk Teamsters president kidnapped and held for $50,000 ransom. The ransom was paid, and that gave Capone enough money to buy Meadowmore Dairy, a huge milk processing business. And as this was all happening, something else was happening in Chicago. The feds were busy working on a tax evasion case against Al Capone. And in 1931, Capone was charged with tax evasion and sentenced to 11 years in prison. So we never really got to see Al Capone, the milk magnate. He went to prison from 1932 to 1939. He was released due to his failing health. He had developed syphilis. Most people believe that this is likely from his time working as a bouncer at the brothel, and he was in very poor health. He ended up dying in 1947 at the age of 48. Again, the milk stamping legend could be just that, but nevertheless, the story has been told so long and so often that it's just referred to as fact. The fact being that Al Capone, the most notorious gangster in history, is the reason that to this day we have expirations on containers of milk. It may not be, but at least the internet says it's true. It's time for Yap Yap with me and a friend. Today, I am calling my good friend Jay Black. Jay is a comedian, a writer, and a screenwriter. He's also performed all over the world, and you just got done doing a gig in Vegas. I saw your name on a billboard.
Yeah, I was at Brad Garrett's Comedy Club in Las Vegas, and if you're in Vegas, go there. It's the best comedy club in the world, and I don't say that just because they booked me, but because every comic, I don't know if magicians have the same thing, but like every comic, when you're out on the road and you're playing like the worst gigs, you say, one day when I make money, I'm going to build the ideal comedy club, and this is how it's going to work. And Brad Garrett is the only human who actually followed through on that ideal and built that comedy club. So I can tell you, from the way you're treated as a comic to the guests and everything else, it's great. And the best part of it is they booked me, but that's just for me personally. Even if they didn't book me, I would tell you, go there and watch them. Best comics, best club. It's great.
But do you have to walk through the kitchen to get to the green room?
You do not.
Wow.
Walk through the back of the green room, and it's pretty amazing. You can actually walk through the bowels of the casino if you want, or you can just go back through the club. There's different ways to get to the green room. It's super cool.
That's cool. I've walked by it and never been in.
It's great. And they have candy in the green room. Candy!
They spare no
They have
expense.
like an apothecary table with little drawers that you can pull open, and each drawer of the apothecary table has a different kind of candy, and they change what candy is in it from month to month, so you never know. Comedians are basically children. We're very easy to keep occupied.
Yeah, and comedians fight like children. I've seen too on the internets. That goes on, at least on the Columbus comedy scene. That happens a lot. So I added a new segment to the show, and I didn't tell you about this, and I should have probably let you know ahead of time. So I added this new segment where you come up with an interesting fact to try to stump me. So you used to be a teacher. I know that you have a bunch of facts in your head, and the whole idea is that you try to come up with something that I didn't know about. And I have to say, honestly, whether or not I already knew about it or if I'm hearing it for the first time. We did this for the first time last week, and I was stumped. I did not know. And I've the knowledge, the listeners probably remember what it was, but the knowledge has already escaped me. I don't remember what it was. So,
Well, I have something
okay.
that is germane to what we were just talking about. I don't necessarily have the what do you call it? The link in front of me that proves this, but I'm willing to bet a pinky finger it's true. So I'm just gonna give it to you, and we'll go from there. You want to start with that, or do we?
Yeah,
end
let's
with
go
that?
for it. Let's go for it now.
All right, we were just talking about green rooms. Where does the nickname, where is the etymology of the word green room come from?
First of all, why have I never Googled this before? I do not know.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I've never questioned it. And I know that historically, a lot of places, the green room has green walls, but that's sort of because it's called a green room. So I think like they're doing that reflexively and reactively instead of like, why? What is the genesis of this?
In vaudeville, when you would travel into a town, if you've ever gone to a show and you've gotten paid cash, the worst thing you can do is get paid cash on the bar so everybody sees how much money you're getting in front of everything. You say, no, 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 we don't do that there. Let's go back to the green room so that I can go get paid. In slang, it is the room that you're getting paid in after a performance. That's why it's called the green room. It is the room where the money exchanges hands. And over time, in the room where you hang out prior to or after a show, and eventually it just became a room that they painted green because the etymology had been lost.
I'm gonna fact check you on that afterward. I don't think the fact check is part of this because we don't need to get into that. But A, that's amazing, and you have stumped me, so I did not know. You win that game. But B, I'm going to start making people pay me in the green room. They try to,
that's what you got to do.
When they hand me that check, I'm going to say, wait. We got to go back here. This is a tradition. So I'm not big on superstitions, but that's going to be one. Also, I just posted about this on Facebook, and I found it very interesting that some people knew what I was talking about and some didn't. The phrase, here, let me give this to you before I forget, is this thing that comedians and magicians and stuff know, because that's what every booker says before they hand you the check. They say, here, let me give this to you before 100%. I forget. And I don't think that outside of our industry, many people know what that phrase is. So,
you know what? I think here, let me give this to you before I forget, is also their blanket statement for all the times that they don't pay you. And then they go, oh, you know me and my bad memory, I totally forgot.
Yeah.
And what you realize 6 months later when the place closes down, oh, they had no money and they were trying to get me to perform for free.
Yeah, they said that same thing to the landlord. Yeah, it does. I actually, I've only been stiffed a couple times, and both times I was able to recover the money. Actually, no, one time I didn't end up doing the gig because I got a call from the agent. It was a college gig, and the person left, and they left all the contracts on the desk when they left, and the next person who took their job was like, yeah, I'm not doing any of this. And it took one of the other acts flying to Louisiana, getting there to find out. And I was on my way, and I was already down there because it was a routed tour. And the agent was like, absolutely do not go to this venue. They will not pay you. You will not have a show. So I had a free night in Shreveport. So that's
free night in Shreveport. That's a great name for a song.
It is.
Of that ends you murdering your transient.
It's a free night in Shreveport. Yeah, I'm into it. Let's get into the quiz, and then we'll talk about what you're doing currently. But for this first question, Jay, we're going to play for a joke. So if you get it wrong, you got to tell me a joke. And if you get it right, I will tell you a joke. Which one of these things is often attributed to the infamous gangster Al Capone? Was it A, mole hair jackets, B, expiration dates on milk cartons, or C, maple bacon donuts?
Wow. I have no connection to this except for a very faint line in my brain. You ever get one of those super faint lines in your brain that said, Jay, go with this one because it sounds like something you may have heard tossed off in a history documentary at some point. I'm going to say expiration dates on milk cartons?
The
That is my
answer
guess.
is B, expiration dates on milk cartons. That is correct. That line in your brain exists for a reason. You've probably heard this before or read it somewhere. So as he was trying to sort of rehabilitate his legacy, this was after he had been blamed for the St. Valentine's Day massacre, never charged, but blamed for it. He was trying to get out of the drug game, much like the last couple seasons of the Sopranos. And he was like, I'm going to, straighten up and fly right. And so he was doing things like opening soup kitchens and things. And he owned a milk distribution facility. And the story goes, now this one's a little bit hard to prove, but the story goes that one of his family members got really sick from expired milk. So he lobbied Chicago City Council to require stamping the bottles with an expiration date, and then he went and bought up all the equipment necessary to stamp bottles with expiration dates. So it was just it was another money-making scheme. Yeah, and it paid the milk paid better than the bootlegging of liquor after Prohibition. So he was that was going to be his new business. So you got it right. I owe you a joke. What do you call it when Al Capone goes camping?
What do you call it?
Criminal intent.
You just angered the mafia. If I never see you again, that's on you. I'm sorry.
I saw a T-shirt today that said, "Intend your puns, cowards." I thought that was a pretty great T-shirt. I might have to get that. Intend your puns, cowards. So, you are currently on a ship. I'm assuming you're on the Encore.
I am on the NCL Encore right now. I'm in Alaska.
Okay.
I'm in Ketchikan, Alaska right now, where it is 60 degrees and overcast, but it's very beautiful with giant mountains.
Are they leaving Ketchikan tonight or in the morning?
I believe we might be leaving any second now. So if you hear a horn in the background, that is not me passing gas. That is I promise you, it's the cruise ship.
And you have a show tonight.
I have a theater show tonight. Yep. In front of, theater shows for comedians are not great. We prefer like any other insect to be in the ground, under the ground with low ceilings. When there's high ceilings, the laughs go up into the rafters and they disappear.
Yeah. Comedy. I feel like it's always better when people are uncomfortable. The more uncomfortable the audience is, the more they laugh. But also, when you're in the theater on a ship, so like for those of you who have never been on a cruise ship, there are multiple venues for people like us. So I'm a variety act, so I'm almost always going to be in the theater. The comedians sometimes will have a comedy club to themselves. Sometimes that's a multi-purpose lounge where sometimes that'll be music, sometimes it'll be comedy, sometimes it'll be lectures. And that's a much better venue. But the other thing with a theater is that the folks who are going to sit down, they might have seen some huge production show on that stage last night. And so there's this weird, like, you're kind of being compared to something that is unfair to compare you to from what they had just seen there.
Yeah, it's sort of like you don't want your wife to watch pornography the morning of your wedding because you're not going to compare well that night. She's
pretty good.
Be like, well, this is what I thought sex was going to be like, and you're like, absolutely not, honey. I'm sorry.
That is a pretty great analogy, but it is. It's not a fair comparison. And so tomorrow night you're on, or you get off tomorrow?
So no, I'm on through till Sunday.
Oh wow.
I have 5 more shows left. These people will be sick and tired of me before the end of the week.
Do you do this different sets for all of those 5?
No, so I have I'm doing 8 shows total.
Wow.
So there is a clean show 1, clean show 2, clean show, dirty show 1, dirty show 2. So there's 3 different shows, and I tell people this, if you've been to this one, these are the dates not to come because it's going to be the same.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I have my first NCL contract starting in 3 days. And I just know that I have to do 2 different shows repeated. So I'll do an A show and a B show, and it'll be on 2 different nights. And I don't know yet if it's an AB or AABB. If it's like early show, late show. So I'll be learning a lot on this and seeing how they want to use me. And that's part of the gig. I haven't really found my stride with cruise ship gigs. But anyway, enough inside baseball. We can talk about that here later. Question 2 for this next question, we're going to play for an admission of what we'd be doing if we weren't doing our current job. Okay?
Okay.
So Al Capone was found guilty of tax evasion, but he was also indicted on breaking prohibition laws. How many violations of the Volstead Act was he charged with? So that's the Volstead Act being, selling or distributing liquor. A, 543 counts. B, 10 counts. Or C, 5,000 counts.
I want to say, I feel like the government probably would not do 5,000 counts. That's a lot of paperwork. I feel like nobody wants to do that much paperwork. But 10 counts feels a little small. Let's go with A, 543 counts.
The answer, believe it or not, is 5,000 counts of the Volstead Act. He was charged with. Now, he was only actually tried on the tax evasion charges because the prosecutor decided that they took precedence over the Volstead Act violations. So he was never actually tried for those 5,000 counts, and he was put away for 11 years on the tax evasion. So that was sort of enough because he was not in great health anyway. But 5,000 counts.
You did a lot of tax evasion, not a lot of syphilis evasion.
No.
In life, evade syphilis more than you evade taxes, kids. That's what I always say.
But syphilis got him out of prison.
Yeah, well, it got him out of this planet too. So I don't know.
This is true.
So,
So the Norwegian Encore, catch a can, and then you do what's the next stop?
Glacier Bay.
Oh, I haven't done that one.
It's a really cool glacier. We kind of do like a circle around, and everybody goes to the top and they take pictures and stuff.
Yeah.
I'll probably do a video, and I'll post it, and someone will cite that video as proof that there is no global warming. And I'll have to go, no, it's still global warming, everybody. And then we do.
All you got to do is get a video of a sad seal on one of those icebergs that's floating by, and like, look at this sad little puppy.
The seal wearing a sun hat and is putting on a sunblock, and I go, oh no, that poor little guy.
Yeah, single
right
tear.
There. One tear, just like the Native American from that commercial. So what would I not be doing if I was? What would I be doing if I was not?
If you weren't.
I have an easy answer for this. I used to be a teacher, so I think I'd probably be teaching. And I'd probably be the most obnoxiously attempting to be funny teacher in history. Because when you have that like gene to be funny all the time, it doesn't go away just because you're not on stage. In fact, the only thing that honestly, the stage has become like, it has settled me down in my life. Because I was one of those people that was like always trying to find the joke or the angle and that. Then you get on stage and you do it for your living, and it almost makes you calmer in everyday life. So I think I'd be a teacher, and I'd be doing all my teacher stuff, but I'd also be bouncing off the walls as the most obnoxious improv act you ever met in real life.
Being that, when was the last time you taught?
2007. So
I bet it would be a huge shock to see the difference in students between then and now.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
But
yeah,
I mean, you have children, so I mean, that's at least you kind of see what kids are like.
Yeah, I get a sense of it. I think the thing that would be a bigger shock is, I came up in sort of the last time when parents didn't really care. Not that they didn't care, but like they just assumed that the teacher knew what they were doing and allowed the teacher to do what they were doing.
Yeah.
And now we have, there's a lot of Facebook groups devoted to undermining teachers. I did a joke on the boat where I said I used to be a teacher, and somebody said, good you got out of that, bunch of dummies. And I won't tell you his political affiliation. I think we can all guess.
You don't have to. Yeah.
Yeah. And I go like, there was a time when like sort of the easiest applause break you could get was say, let's give it up for the teachers. And now there's an entire devoted group that says we hate teachers. And I don't know if I'd be able to deal with that, just on my temperament wouldn't be able to deal with that.
Yeah, that's rough. We've got a few of those here in the school board where I live, where, they ran on parents' rights, which is insane to me. But let's move on. For question 3, we're going to play for a sticker. I promised you when you agreed to come on the podcast from the cruise ship that not only would you be making that sweet, sweet cruise ship money, but also possibly a 3-inch square sticker. So
my whole dream of life is true.
Of these 3 prisons, which one did Al Capone serve his time in? Was it A, Alcatraz, B, Sing Sing, or C, Rikers?
I want to say Sing Sing because I watched a lot of movies from olden times, and they always said Sing Sing. I know Rikers is in New York, and I know Alcatraz is in San Francisco, and I don't know where Sing Sing is, but I assume it might be closer to Chicago. So for all of these reasons, none of which make any kind of sense, it's just a spaghetti of neurons in my brain saying Sing Sing. I'm going to say Sing Sing.
Believe it or not, it was Alcatraz.
Oh my God! It makes sense. His name was Al.
Yeah, yeah, that's why they put him there. Actually, he spent 1932 and 1933 in a penitentiary in Atlanta, but then he moved to Alcatraz when it opened in 1934. So he was an inaugural Alcatraz inmate. He was there with the first batch, and he played the banjo in a prison band in Alcatraz.
You imagine the people that saw Al Capone play syphilitic Al Capone playing banjo.
He sucked, but they were afraid to tell him. That guy with the scar. He sucks at banjo.
Don't tell him. He killed a guy. He shivved a guy and told him about his B string being out of tune.
Is there a B string? I don't know if that's a thing. You have a musical son. Oh, and you're musical as well. So,
well, my son has a banjo, so I can ask him. I don't know. By the way, while we were talking, I sort of fact checked myself on that green room thing. Apparently, I'm full of crap.
Oh no,
I was wrong about it. I had heard a Just So story about it. There's a lot of other reasons for it, so I just wanted to tell the audience, Google it. It's very interesting. We don't have time now to get into it. But,
okay. Well, I'm going to Google it. Hang on.
It's from what I understand, it might be Cockney rhyming slang.
Green gauge is stage. Green gauge room is stage room. That's I don't understand rhyming slang, the British rhyming slang, because it seems like way too many steps between the word that's being used and the origin for anyone to get the reference.
Yeah, I think that's the whole point.
I guess so, yeah.
If you're from the 5 blocks that use rhyming slang in Cockney, you know exactly what everyone's talking about. And then everybody else comes in and goes like, listen, you people need to stop.
So there's another reference to limelight.
Right.
The green room was a response to limelight, though its name is merely a coincidence. Limelight refers to calcium oxide, not the fruit or color. Interesting. So it looks like there's not one prevailing theory here.
Yeah. So, and what I found with, and you could probably do a whole show on this, what I find with etymologies like that is most of them are just so stories.
Yeah.
And the story is so much better sometimes than the actual reason why. So I heard that story and I repeated it, and then I realized I've repeated it a million times. How many minds have I corrupted with that story?
Your story's better than these ones on Wikipedia anyway. Yeah, we were talking last week with my guest about how we attribute such cool stories and meaning behind song lyrics of famous songs written by Bob Dylan and the Beatles, and a lot of time it was just because it's the word that sounded best, and there is no it's so demoralizing or depressing to be like, oh, I thought that this was some reference, some allusion to literature, but no, it's just that what popped in his head and he said it.
But you know what? In a lot of ways, that is the beauty of art, is the meaning that we ascribe to it. These are just brilliant artists, but a lot of times just lads from Liverpool going all right, well, this sounds cool, put that in there. And then an entire generation of people are like, that's the most meaningful song I've ever heard, and I'm going to tell you why. I kind of did that.
Yeah, absolutely. He was singing about me when he said that. Okay, so question 4. This was a thing we did last week, and it was fun, so we'll do it again. Let's play for an admission of the first time we really remember getting in trouble. So if you can think back to an early time that you got in trouble with the folks or whatever, or school, however you remember it. After Capone was imprisoned, his bulletproof Cadillac was seized by the feds. What happened to it after that? A, it was used by President Franklin D. Roosevelt. B, it was put on display in a Chicago museum. Or C, it was blown up as a 4th of July spectacle.
Oh, I would love for it to have been blown up as a Fourth of July spectacle. But I
Yeah.
feel like this is, I could be wrong on this, but it feels like this is immediately something you would put on display at a museum. So I'm going to say B, museum display.
This one's crazy. It was used by President FDR. Can you
That's
believe
insane. How
it
is
is
that
insane?
possible?
He used because it was a bulletproof Cadillac and no one had those. You know, Capone could afford it. Apparently, our
Right.
government couldn't. And they're like, "Oh, that's a good idea." So President Franklin D. Roosevelt actually rode around in a limo that was made for Al Capone.
I would love if like some like weirdly decked out Lambo that we seized in a drug raid in Miami, like lime green with like spinners on it and like all sorts of
This is Diddy's
jacked up.
Lambo.
It's like a Diddy's Lambo, and all of a sudden you see Biden stepping out of it going, "Hey, we had it. Why wouldn't I use it?" I think America would probably dig that pretty heavily.
That would get him elected 100%. Diddy's
Yeah.
Lambo would seal the deal for Biden in November. What?
So
Yeah, do you remember when you first got in trouble?
I have a dim memory of being yelled at, but also laughed at. I was probably 2 years old or roundabouts. My brother had just been born, my baby brother, and they brought me to the little viewing room where the babies are kept, like puppies at a mall,
Yeah.
where you can look at the babies. They held me up. They said, "That's your baby brother." And I said, "Send it back," because I did not want a baby brother. And I remember they all laughed. It was cute, but they also said, "You should not say that." And I couldn't fathom why I was getting yelled at for it. So that's like not just the first time I ever got in trouble, but it's the first like memory that I have is seeing my little brother and saying, "Send it back."
That's pretty great. I love it. I love it. My parents used to love to tell the story about when I was born, and my brother, who's 2 years older than me, he just looked in and he said, "Hi, baby," and then walked away. Like very matter of fact, like very business like, "Hi, baby," and then walked away.
Yeah, it's like this baby's here now. So I've
Yeah.
he had 2-year-old business to attend to. He had a little briefcase. He had,
If you met
Yeah.
my brother, it's just him anyway. That's just like what he would do now. He'd be like, "Oh, hi, Mike," and then see ya. So this next question is for all the marbles. If you get it right, you're welcome back on the podcast anytime, whether you're at sea or not. If you get it wrong, banned for life forever.
Oh,
Here's your
okay.
question.
Sure.
If you became a career criminal, what would be your crime?
What would be my crime? I would be violating the emoluments clause because from what I can tell, this does not get enforced at all. You can break this rule as much as you want. So I would get myself elected into office and I would build a hotel across the street from where the mansion was, wherever the governor's mansion or the president's mansion. And I would charge the highest rate possible for anybody to stay there.
Right.
And I would only meet with lobbyists who stayed at my hotel. And I bring this up because just in the recent history, apparently this is an unenforceable crime. You can do this as much as you want, and people will just call you a smart businessman. You won't go to jail for it. So I would make millions doing this and never face a single consequence. That would be my crime.
Absolutely right, and that is a correct answer. The hardest part of that scheme is you got to get elected. That's the hardest part. And I mean, it's an amazing grift if you can do it. But yeah, get yourself a resort and make the Secret Service stay there and then charge them double and done.
I think you could get elected in some states just by saying that your platform is you're going to violate the emoluments clause as a way to show the liberals that you won't back down. And people go, "I like the cut of his jib."
That's true.
Good jib cutter. And
fantastic, man. That's awesome. Well, Jay, it was a pleasure. You went 2 for 5, but the last one counts for all of the big bucks. So you're welcome back anytime. Go see Jay Black. You can just search for Jay Black. You'll find all his comedy stuff. It's JAYBLACK. And what else you got coming up? Anything fun?
So I have a movie that's coming out on streaming very soon that we're very excited about. I didn't write it. I produced it. It's a horror movie called Tenants. We don't have a date that when it exactly drops, But if you see tenants scroll by on your Tubi or Roku channel,
Yeah.
just put it on repeat and go to bed. Like, go to sleep to it every
Yeah.
night, because every time an ad plays, I think I get a nickel, and I just need a lot of nickels to get my money back on this. So please watch that. And if I put out 2 social media videos every day, you go to jblack.tv. You'll see my different socials. They drop at 1 and 5:30 every single day. I've not missed a day in a year.
Wow.
So you can get videos. I know it's killing me, Michael. It's killing me. But come see my videos. I drop all the time.
That's incredible. I'm doing one of these a week, and I just took a break for about 5 weeks because it was killing me. And it's hard because, you know, for instance, like I said, I'm going to Hawaii on Saturday for a week, and I have to figure out what I'm going to do about that. And my plan right now is, since I'm only about 5 days ahead instead of a week ahead, is that I'm just going to produce an episode on the ship and record it with my phone or something, and just do a mobile episode and make it work. And they have Starlink on the NCL ships, so we can make it work. So yeah, that's the plan.
Starlink is really good. You know, I've fought Elon a lot, but Starlink on these ships is a game changer.
Yeah,
I'm using it right now, and it's great.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. So good luck with your shows this week, man. I hope that the cruise is good. Alaska is amazing. Whales get boring, which is a pretty great thing. So it's so good to see you. Thanks for taking a few minutes, and good luck tonight.
Thanks for having me. I can't wait to come back. I give all of your listeners a kiss. Mwah!
That is all for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in again. And here's the voice of Chicago's next mobster.
Thank you for listening to The Internet Says It's True. To listen to episodes ad-free and a week early, support us on Patreon. You can do that at patreon.com/Michael Kent. If you learned something just now that you didn't already know, go to the Apple Podcast app and leave us a review with 5 stars and a few words. That helps us a ton, because that's how the algorithm works. I don't know what an algorithm is, but just do it. See you next week for a brand new episode of The Internet Says It's True!
The Internet Says It's True would like to thank the Patreon subscribers whose monthly contributions help to make this show possible. Sean Brown, Joshua Endress, Dallas Ray, Bryce Swanson, Eugene Anderson, Jim and Joanne Martin, Mitch and Andrew Joseph Kemplin, and the show's official Emperor, Kick Track. The show is written and produced by me, Michael Kent. The theme song is by Finite Music Forge, and all audio clips in this episode are used for education and commentary and used under Fair Use Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107. You can listen to past episodes by searching for The Internet Says It's True wherever you get your podcasts, and you can see bonus content at patreon.com/Michael Kent.